Chiefs are getting ready for the draft, and they have made moves in free agency, but there's 3 sneaky things they still got to get done today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back in Chiefs Kingdom. Today we're brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more, and right now you can get $200 back in bonus bets if you win a $5 bet just to get started. That's $200 bet back if your bet wins at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can get started right there. We're going to get started right here because there's a lot of fanfare. There's been some acquisitions. There's a lot of changes going on. But there's still 3 things that, despite a move or 2, have not been addressed and still have to be, even if you sign a journeyman or something like that, you have to shore these things up to make a championship run and future-proof yourself. That's what we're talking about today, future-proofing. He's Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. He's going to give you all the cap. He's going to give you all the quarterback statistics, everything that you want to know about. The main stuff that makes the NFL go round you can find on KCChiefsCorner.com. I'm over at RogueAPC.com, where I run the Athletic Matrix, the draft guide, everything you want to know about my experience in 20 years as a strength conditioning coach and a physiologist, give you the insight at what goes on in the NFL. You can find that at RogueAPC.com, as well as NFL33.com, where we run down team building for the entire league. And then RGR Football, we have our unique take on what the Chiefs are doing, so check that out as well. If you want information here on Locked On Podcast Network, it's super simple because we're here free every single day on every single platform, starting on YouTube, where I'd ask you to like and sub and hit that bell, and then you can move on to the Spotify and the Apple Podcasts and any audio platform that you like. It's free for you at least 5 days a week, sometimes quite a bit more. And then the last line of defense, if you want instant notifications and our bottom line takes, you can get in the insider text line. All the everydayers do that at 816-357-8781, and that is the easiest way to get communication. We have a lot to communicate today because despite the big moves, despite the Hollywood Browns, there's still 3 things that have to get done. It can't be just a single solution. You have to be multi-thread, and you have to guard yourself against the future. What's the backup quarterback going to be? Not just for this season, but for the future as well. Is there enough in the tight end room to help Travis Kelce as he gets just another year older and a little bit older and a little bit this and a little bit that? Getting nicked up is tough. But we start today. The number one thing is the offensive line, because despite bringing back Caliendo on a restricted rights deal, you lost Nick Allegretti, which I think was bigger than most people realize. And right now, if they had to start training, you can maybe project Joe Thuney to be available for the season. Nothing is guaranteed. And at his age, a pec re-injury is always something that kind of looms out there. So how do you future-proof yourself? Not just for the tackle spot that is right now a second-year player getting ready to battle against what is maybe a possible draft pick versus arguably a Hall of Famer at left guard that isn't able to work right now. And then you have 2 pending free agents at center and right guard. The only guy that's here for the next 3 seasons is Jawan Taylor at right tackle. That's a lot at one position group.
Definitely is, and I've been sitting here looking while you've been starting us off.
Ranting.
Tyron Smith just... Huh?
Ranting?
No, it's fine. Tyron Smith just went to the Jets. So I was looking at free agents, top available guys: Trent Brown, Kevin Zeitler, Connor Williams, Mekhi Becton, Jonah Williams, Dalton Reisner. And then you get to Josh Jones and Donovan Smith. And then Evan Brown, Cam Fleming. Those are the top. Oh, and Greg Van Roten. I apologize. I missed him. Those are the top free agent availability type players. For me, I can't see Kansas City really wanting to go. Tyron Smith was number 14. I would have thought, quite frankly, that would have been an intriguing fit. High, maybe a little bit higher risk than you'd really necessarily want because he's been injured so much, but definitely a top tier player if he was healthy and could play. So to me, that would have been something I would have considered doing as a incentive laden deal for left tackle Tyron Smith. But at this point, I'm not so sure that you can't figure that this is going to be a draft pick, because I don't really know that you look at that roster of available players and say there's somebody on there that you could bring in that would really start. I mean, Trent Brown's not a left tackle, and the Chiefs don't need a right tackle. And I
Right.
can't see them switching Jawan Taylor at this point.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you as well. And it's just one of those situations where you can't get everything done in free agency. They have enough to field the team right here, right? They have enough futures contracts that you could maybe see somebody coming along. But this market's been really crazy. Robert Hunt goes out and gets $20 million a year
Crazy.
at guard.
Crazy deal. Yep.
Damian Lewis is at 13. I don't know that you can say that he's worth that either. Like, there's some crazy contracts being given out, and the Chiefs have been sitting out there. And all kudos to Nick Allegretti for getting 5.3 a year. Good for him; he deserves that. But it's a little iffy to me.
One of the reasons that you keep seeing these guys get so much money is because free agents generally don't, like, those types of guys generally don't hit free agency, and the NFL has such a lack of good depth at the offensive line position in general. It's a huge deal. I mean, one of the things, and I know people have been frustrated at times with Andy Heck over the years, not so much lately, but especially early on in his career. But Kansas City's been blessed having Heck here for as long as he's been here. He's done a fantastic job with the offensive line. And yes, there's always going to be things you can iron out and work on. But I do think that is one of the reasons why Kansas City has continuously gotten better at offensive line. We don't need to talk about the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay because you're talking about third and fourth string players trying to go up against starters. So not really a fair proposition at that point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it comes back to this O-line and how they build it back up. I do think it's an outside possibility. We know that Andy, and Brett are perfectly comfortable with what we might consider veterans that have reached and fallen off their athletic peak. They feel that experience can get that done. So I do feel there's an outside chance that they're still thinking Donovan Smith might be viable. We all know how I feel and how you feel that it should be a top priority in the draft. Doesn't mean it has to be a competitive piece right now. I think it's more concerning the interior and the backup snapping.
Yeah, and that is a big issue. And I will say about Donovan Smith, he wanted to go to the Jets, it sounded like, from a conversation that he had during seasons, and that's probably not an option anymore. So to me, it wouldn't make a lot of sense if Donovan Smith ends up back in Kansas City. But I do think it would be on a one-year deal, and I do think it'd be on something that would happen after the draft. So it would be something that they wouldn't be doing in the next couple of weeks because I don't think that they want to go that direction in case they're able to get a guy that they like. When you start talking about the interior, you're absolutely right. I mean, without Nick Allegretti, you're sitting there with a guy that you don't feel good stepping into that interior right now and starting games for you, especially at the center position. Creed Humphrey's been an Iron Man, and congratulations to him on that. But you don't want to bet that that's always going to be the case. You want to at least have somebody there that you feel can step in and at least be serviceable. I don't think they have that on the roster right now. Caliendo is probably the next man up right now, and I just don't feel comfortable with that.
And I think that's fair. They're able to get different archetypes of linemen, but I definitely think that that's one thing that we have not discussed enough, and I think Chiefs Kingdom in general isn't prepared for the fact that you have to have somebody else that can step in and play three positions. You need interior swing. You need somebody to compete with Wanye to be a starter if Wanye will not be. Otherwise, you need someone that's capable of playing both sides and being the swing tackle as well. So there's some significant things that have to be accomplished here.
And they have Niang, but I still don't think you want to put any of your eggs in that basket. The Chiefs have a lot more knowledge on Niang than we do, so it's possible that they know where he is injury-wise, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and that's the big issue.
That's true. And he's not alone. Health is a concern here. The Chiefs have moved on from Jody Fortson, but that tight end room needs not only juice, but needs to be somebody that can be available if your starter has to take a couple of snaps off, has to be able to absorb some of that. How do they back up and bring more juice to the room behind Travis Kelce? That's coming up next. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game in this tournament whenever you want. Whether you're betting on an upset or the one seed, it's time to go dancing with America's #1 sportsbook, and that is FanDuel. Right now, new customers are getting $200 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins on FanDuel, it's $200 back using point spreads, money lines, whatever you're looking for. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Visit us at FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet your college hoops until they cut down the nets right now on FanDuel. If you want Locked On Sports, you want Locked On Sports today and every day and every moment. And that's 24/7. You can find that on Locked On Sports Today. Go like and sub and get on that as well. I'm really excited about this because I think we recognize how special this is to have a pillar like Travis Kelce on this roster. But he admitted himself, not only just the injury that started last season off on a rocky start, but he has spoken on his podcast about the general grind of getting older and needing a little bit more support. And for me, that means reps off come the regular season. And I say this every year, and I'm going to do it again, and I'll probably get fired up later in the season. But now after watching this championship run, I need to be less concerned about what Travis Kelce does in the regular season. They have to have other guys that can step up at that position group. Noah Gray has made some nice catches, but I don't think that at this point you can feel like you can step him into a role where if he needed a 3-game stretch at 8 targets to move the ball, move the chains, and get this offense going, I'm not there yet. Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm not. And I don't think that you have a guy that, and we've talked about this, so I don't really need to go into it very deep, but there's not a guy on the roster that can replace Travis Kelce. That's kind of a no-brainer because there's nobody in the NFL that can replace Travis Kelce. But you don't even really have somebody I think that could step in and be 70 or 80% of what he could be. And that would be on a good week for them. And that's a problem. And you look at this roster and you say, okay, well, they've had Noah Gray for a couple of years. Now they add a guy in Irv Smith Jr., who I think is a good addition. I think that could add a lot to your 3 tight end sets. But one thing that they used Blake Bell for was a lot of blocking, and I don't think that you have that guy on the roster right now, which that's okay if you're going to go that direction, if you feel like you can, but it causes other issues in the run game. It's going to cause issues probably a little bit in the passing game just because they would keep Blake Bell in and throw the ball to the other 4 targets. But the other thing that I think plays into this, and we're talking about tight ends, but the wide receivers also play into this. And the reason I say that is because the wide receivers have to command double teams, or at least linebackers taking a little bit of leverage to step outside versus being able to stay in the box and hit Kelce when he's going out in routes. And I understand part of it's alignment. That's part of what the Chiefs do with Kelce is they move them all around and they align them wherever they want to align them. But you still have to have the wideouts. And last year, they didn't have the wideouts that would take people outside the box or at least make them shade further outside the box. So that part of that is also going to be on the wide receiver room.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Rasheed's emergence certainly helps that, but so does Hollywood Brown's. And as much as you can say that he's been on a decline the last couple of seasons in Arizona, that's fair. I think quarterback play is a giant part of that. But he still demands respect. I don't think that's enough. I do think, as we discussed earlier in the week, you have to have a third legitimate target for this offense that draws coverage in order to keep defenses honest and keep them from just hammering away with multiple players at Travis Kelce. But you can also fix that by making the other tight ends more respect demanding as well. And I agree with you on Irv Smith. I think he's got, I wouldn't call him a deep threat. He isn't the line him up at wide receiver as much as they do with Travis Kelce, in my opinion. But I do like the shorter stuff, the drags, the intermediate routes over the middle, certainly the seam work, decent athlete. And I personally like the H work that he can do behind the line of scrimmage, playing off the ball a little bit so he gets a little bit cleaner release, a little natural delay in the offense. But I do think this is another aspect that whether it's an overgrown wide receiver that they have to convert, Johnny Wilson, Florida State, or whether it's an actual true tight end, Theo, that they have to add to this room and give themselves another chance at being more of a wider dimension for Travis's help.
I would love to see it. I have a hard time seeing them doing it, considering we've been saying this for the past 3 seasons, they've yet to really invest. Noah Gray was a good start. It's not enough. Like I said, I like Irv Smith. I like what he brings to the team. It's not enough to really take pressure off of Travis. And the other side of that is Travis is going to want to be on the field. We saw that in the Super Bowl. We saw that, throughout the season. He wants to be out there. He wants to be competing, and you get all that. But as a coach, as a organization, you have to look at what is best for the player, what is best for the team long term. And when I say long term, I'm not necessarily talking 3 or 4 years down the road. I'm talking what's best for the team this year throughout the entire season. that's more of a long-term in that scenario, and what's maybe best for the player and the team over the next 2 seasons, because I do think he's got at least 2 years left. So we'll see how that turns out. But, adding the tight ends, at early in the draft is something that I've wanted them to do for a long time. And it's mainly because Kansas City loves using their 2 and 3 tight end sets. If you make Noah Gray your 3rd tight end on this roster, think about what that does for the rest of the NFL and what they're going to have to guard in tight end 1 and tight end 2. And then you add in, a guy like Rashee Rice and a guy like Marquise Brown, and even I'll throw in, Justin Watson and, Kadarius Toney and a Sky Moore. Those types of guys become better players because you have more guys pulling coverage across the entire field.
Yeah. And it becomes an asset rather than a liability or a question mark at the very least.
And the Chiefs have shown, one thing. The Chiefs have shown they will carry 4 tight ends, so it doesn't necessarily mean Irv Smith couldn't be on the roster.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we're going with that precedent, especially if they do achieve a little bit bulkier, a little bit better run support. I think they're going to add to the running back room as well, so that it is not as much where you need a blocking tight end all the time. I think that does lend itself here, but it's not the only thing. There's always a doomsday scenario. There's always who's going to play week 18, right? The backup quarterback is, I won't call it a drift, but it's a question mark right now. And I think it's going to be for the foreseeable future. How do they address that with Patrick Mahomes being QB1 in this league? You got to have a backup. What do they do coming up next?
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in a day? Would you go for a run? Would you take a nap? Would you read a book? What are the kind of things that you would add to your day if you had that extra hour? A lot of us spend our times wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. BetterHelp.com/lockedon.
Locked On Sports Today has everything you need 24/7. Make sure you check out that national feed. You guys are going to be happy that you did. I'm going to be happy when we know who the backup quarterback is. We've had this string of veterans, and I do think that Andy Reid would rather have a veteran signal caller behind Patrick Mahomes in case, Patrick's going to be Patrick. He might turn an ankle. He might miss a game here and there. So you need to have somebody that you have confidence in. I still feel like you got to start young, even at the backup. So this is a super deep quarterback class. And I think this is the kind of year where I want them to go draft a backup quarterback.
I laugh because you say he may twist an ankle. The last couple of times we've seen him twist an ankle, he plays through it. So,
yeah, well,
kind of one of those things. Chad Henne was fantastic for Patrick Mahomes. Blaine Gabbert, I don't know. I haven't really heard a ton about Blaine Gabbert in Kansas City. We do know that, and Alex Smith wasn't a backup. He was obviously the starter. But what he meant to Patrick Mahomes early on in his career was huge. And now Mahomes could be that guy to somebody else. Not saying that the next QB is going to come in and replace him, but just saying he can be that veteran presence and he can be that guy in the room to really help a rookie come through and be able to do things. I would love it if they drafted a QB and that was their intention of, getting a QB and making him their backup for the future. But I do think you're right. I think Andy Reid likes a veteran. But the only thing that you could really wonder is maybe can they find a veteran? And this is the thing that would be intriguing to me. Can they find a veteran that they can put on the practice squad that can just be there the entire season on the practice squad? And maybe you have a rookie that you bring along and he's your backup the entire season, but you have this veteran guy that can still be in the building and you could bring up to the practice squad or you could bring up from the practice squad if you absolutely needed something because something happened to Mahomes, which it invariably does. just because it's the position. A lot of things to talk about when you start looking at getting a rookie QB and what you could really do. I mean, if you're getting a rookie QB in the 6th, 7th round, you're getting a guy that's maybe you're able to develop behind Mahomes for the next couple of seasons and trade him away for a 2nd or 3rd round pick in a couple of years.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I see specifically, I see a Gardner Minshew path for Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman had a bad year at Notre Dame after transferring for his final season. In the right offense with outside weapons, Sam Hartman was a monster, 15,000 yards passing in college. That's epic. I think he's the kind of guy that is exactly that scenario that you're talking about, a 6th, 7th round pick, because the last impression you got was not good. But when I look at the free agent market, would you want to bring in somebody like Ryan Tannehill? It doesn't do a whole lot for me. Do you bring in Carson Wentz, who has played in a similar system under Doug Peterson, but has been a malcontent for several years running? I don't know that I want to do that either. There's Brian Hoyer, there's Joshua Dobbs, there's even Tyler Huntley. None of those guys scream, hey, I got to go get them.
Yeah, no, none of them do, and they're not going to. And I don't think that it's going to be an issue. I don't think Kansas City is going to be looking at bringing in one of those guys. I think if they're going to bring back somebody, it's going to be Blaine Gabbert as their veteran type. It's just hard because you look around this league and you obviously hope that your QB never comes off the field, or he never comes off for injury purposes. I guess I'll say it that way. I mean, you could say that you would hope that you come off the field, if you're up 20 or 30 points in the 4th quarter, and get the other guys some time. But the reality is you got to play in for everything. And Blaine Gabbert, while I don't think he was great in this offense last year, I think you saw enough to where you feel like you could be semi-comfortable with him. I don't think he's going to be able to step in and win many games for you. Mm-hmm. But if you put a competent roster around him, I think he could be good enough to where he could challenge for games. Depends on who you're playing, obviously. And that's the big key. So the big question is do you bring in a guy like Gabbert again for another year? Which if you do, it's probably going to be after the draft or after they, make some other moves to open up the cap space, because I don't think they have the cap in order to bring him back for that type of money. But I don't think that's also going to be an issue. We'll see.
I like that you mentioned that, but I would only disagree just slightly because he's 34 years old, hasn't played much. I don't know that he needs as much cash as he got last season.
Yeah, but they signed him for that for a reason. So I'm guessing somebody out there was offering him something close to that, and he chose he wanted to be in Kansas City. So is it possible that you can get him back for less? I guess in theory it's possible. What I would say is that I would expect that it's going to be around the same, maybe even a little bit more, just because the cap went up so much, and it brings everything up. But he's not going to get anywhere near what some of these other guys that are getting that are going to be backups in challenging type positions. I mean, he's never going to be challenging for a starting position in Kansas City. It's a clear backup scenario, but that's also what makes it so appealing to me to go out and draft a guy, because even if you bring Gabbert back for one more year, and say you go draft a guy in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round this season, if he can be your backup, not necessarily this year, but next year, how much cap space does that free up over the next 2 years?
Yeah, I'm 100% with you.
It doesn't seem like a lot, but that extra $1 or $2 million could produce a guy like a Tranquil or somebody similar.
Yeah. You never know. The way that the Chiefs have been doing on 1-year contracts and getting guys to actually stick where they want to bring a Tranquil back, that's what's been working.
Or you look at a guy like, and I know, we're both a little bit down on him right now, but you look at, Allegretti last year is a perfect example. He got a 4-year qualifying offer, counted less than 1.4 against the cap last year. That's the difference that you would talk about between Gabbert being at $3 million and a rookie being at around $1 million.
Yep.
That type of player. And that doesn't seem like a ton, but when you talk about what Allegretti was able to do for this roster, that was actually a huge deal.
The big question for me, especially with Gabbert, getting to that point, like you said, it's probably just a 1 year, but are we getting to the point where Patrick isn't as reliant on having a veteran in the room? Let's be real, 3 MVPs and 3 Super Bowls at this point. Yes, there are things he's still always going to be able to learn, but I'm not sure we have to have resources in the room to help him week to week, to study for him and that kind of thing.
And I don't disagree with you on that, but I'm not sure that's a Patrick thing.
Okay.
I think that's a Reed thing. I think Reed wants somebody that he feels like is going to be competent to come in. And that's why I think that they continue to go back to veterans, because he feels like a veteran is going to be able to step in better than a rookie. And that's why I do think that you're going to end up having a veteran this year, because you don't have a rookie that can step in and he's going to feel confident with. Maybe after the draft, you're going to be able to look at, in 2025, maybe you don't have to bring back a veteran because you drafted somebody in 2025 that you already know is your backup and you trust that he's going to be able to step in and do the system. But you're not going to know that until you get through the draft and you draft your guy. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be a draft pick. It could be an undrafted free agent. Let's be fair about it. There are going to be some QBs that probably get to undrafted status that could maybe come in and eventually become a player in the NFL. It's not highly likely, but it's possible. So something to watch there.
Yeah, there's always something crazy that can happen. We want to know what you think. Is the O-line ready? What about the tight end room? And who do you want as your backup quarterback? Leave your comments below. Like, sub, hit the bell here on YouTube. Get subbed on Spotify and Apple and all the audio platforms. We have more coming for you. I'm going to run down some special stuff tomorrow about what I want to see happen. And then Monday, it's mock draft once again. All kinds of content for you. We're here 5 days a week. You everydayers, we appreciate you and thank you for being here with us every single day on all these platforms. We're going to have a good time. We appreciate you being with us today. Thanks for spending your hard-earned time with us talking Chiefs, and we're going to give it more to you tomorrow. So thanks for being here.